Nashville. I wanted to make this episode because a lot of things have happened in the last 48 hours. I would say it's probably been the most consequential 48 hours in the war of Israel. And there was a vice presidential debate that happened last night also. So we'll get all to that in a moment. So the reason why it's very important is because Hezbollah was always supposed to be the shell organization, or they call proxies of Iran. But Iran yesterday decided to basically attack Israel on their own without using proxies. And 181 missiles were basically sent from the capital of Iran, all the way to Tel Aviv, which there are 10 million people living in Tel Aviv, which is the size of New York City, all which had to go into bomb shelters. And the United States used two destroyers to help prevent these missiles from landing in the area of Tel Aviv. They said only 12 of them made landfall. So this is so important because it's always been a conflict that has been fought with proxies. Now that the proxies are only a piece of the puzzle and actual nations are coming up against Israel, such as the Lebanese and other terrorist states, and to states that support terror like Iran. So we are looking at the escalation happening very quickly. A lot of times, the reason why these people continue to fight Israel and also invade smaller countries across the globe, not just Iran, but other wars that have started by like Russia, is because this president is an anti-war president and he does not act upon his words. So when he was saying, as a response, what would happen if Israel gets invaded by Iran, and you have a word to say to Iran, he says don't. And then Kamala Harris says don't. So it's basically leaving these very, very evil countries to test the United States by killing our soldiers overseas, and no retaliation. Okay, we'll just send almost 200 missiles to Israel, no retaliation. So what is President Biden going to do now that they've actually went across the line after he said don't? Well, he's probably going to do nothing. He's probably going to run off the clock, try to pass the baton to Harris, and let the American people be scared out of their minds while we are looking at World War III right in the middle of the face. And it's really true, because World War III could happen if the Russians get involved with Iran. They're already allies, but if they actually start invading Israel, or they do strikes against Israel, or nuclear is involved, then the United States, of course, would fight back alongside of Israel, and it would be a war that involves Russia in a two-front war with Russia and Israel and Ukraine, and then Israel fighting the Lebanese, the Houthis, the Iranians, and the Iranian proxies, along with Hamas. So it would be a very, very, very complicated war. But it's happening right before our eyes. And the only thing that Americans are not getting involved with is because we have a weak president. If we had a strong president like Donald Trump, there would be about 10,000 groups on the border of Lebanon right now that are American. And it's not going to happen because this guy is basically a shell of a human being, probably with the mental capacity of the likes of Jimmy Carter, which, by the way, yesterday was his 100th birthday. So moving forward, we have to be very, very strong as Americans, not just in financial or military might, but knowing the moral compass that we have to follow is ones that we have followed for generations. And even if there's one generation of politicians who get in the Oval Office for 4 years that are weak and don't want to protect innocence, there's going to be a new administration 4 years later that will just replace them. That's why the founding fathers are brilliant, by making there just being a rotating wheel of politicians coming in and out. So not one would ever have a totalitarian reign. And we have to also know that it is the freedom of choice of the people to choose our next leader. So that brings us to the debate last night between Tim Walz and JD Vance, and it was an absolute, I would say, winner on JD Vance's side because he gave facts and logic and reason. And I don't know where they get these guys, but Tim Walz basically looked like Joe Biden. Half the time his mouth was open, his eyes were big, he looked shocked at all the things that Tim Walz was saying. It was definitely 3 versus 1, where the moderators, who were both women and feminists, would just be ripping apart JD Vance and his record while defending Tim Walz. And it's so obvious. And, the conflict between two political sides in the United States is just with words. And it was very, very close to becoming a physical conflict when Joe Biden said that if, they wanted to take over the government, they don't need AK-47s. No, sorry, they don't need AK-47s, they need F-15s. And that was just kind of like, oh, yeah, so you can, casually talk about bombing United States citizens with F-15s and have everyone just get around in a corner and sing Kumbaya. And it was a direct threat to the American people. I remember when it happened. And in the same way, he will not protect Israel, and he will not protect the likes of letting people win wars. And the Ukrainians who he claims to protect, the Ukrainians are not allowed to go certain, milestones into Russia because they don't want a conflict with Russia. So it's like they're pushing for a stalemate in both wars. That's why they want to ceasefire now. And it's so ridiculous because you cannot win a war on a ceasefire or a stalemate. You either win the war or you lose the war. And right now, the evil powers of Russia and Iran are trying to kill Israel and take over Ukraine. And the United States government needs to be behind these countries fully. I'm a taxpayer. I'm funding these wars as a taxpayer, and I want for these countries to win. I do not want a stalemate, but Joe Biden wants there to be a stalemate. So it's all an effort to look like we're doing the right thing, but not letting these countries actually win. So let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. Also, there's a port strike happening. So they always talk about an October surprise, but this surprise is going to be a hit all across the economy right around election season, which is in a month, and Christmas time, where prices are going to rise. Imports are not coming in, so a lot of items are not going to be on the shelf. And what's left on the shelf is going to skyrocket in price. So stock up on groceries now. This is going to make the Democrats look very, very bad because Joe Biden talks about being a union guy and going on picket lines, and then he's still allowing this to happen without giving a word otherwise, as far as these people wanting a 75% pay increase, which is insane. Most employers give 2% every year. It doesn't matter if inflation is high or not. Your job is not worth a 75% increase. I think these people are just, trying to make CEO money as employees, and it doesn't work that way. If you want to be a CEO, start a company. So let me guys know what you think in the comments. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great Wednesday.